The other day, I walked into a room with people who looked nothing like me, who didn't have the beliefs or constraints or restrictions or phenomena of ideology or philosophy. They had nothing like me. They had nothing to do with me and the way that I thought and the way that I perceived life and the beliefs that I had and the people that I once knew and the things that I would once say were constraints in my life, right? None of them ever experienced these things. And it has been such an interesting experience moving country, right? Like halfway across the world, because nobody sees things the way I see it, right? Nobody perceives, and for me, I find myself in many rooms where I am the only person pursuing what I am pursuing. And I remember when I first started this journey, I said how special I wanted to be, right? And how special I wanted this experience to feel, right? How unique my life was, because I was not taking this traditional route. And I'm not saying that those things were wrong, or not saying that those things were not, or are not certain things that I still want today, but I never knew what that came with. I never knew the caveats of what I was saying, because when you walk into a room with people who have everything that you want, right? And you're standing there, these are your dreams, right? They have everything that you want and they're willing to help you do that, right? They don't have the perceptions of life that you have. They don't have those, they don't have your mental, limitations. They don't think the way you think, or see things the way you see them, or believe in the same systems they've never experienced. So your excuses no longer stand. There is nothing harder than being in a room with people who don't perceive things or you perceive things, and will not accept your excuses, right? Because they aren't excuses to them. They cannot understand how, maybe there's somebody with so much potential can believe so little of themselves. And that is the hardest thing I never knew I was signing up to when I started this whole thing. Was, when I walked into this room, and there was actually nobody who looked like me. Yeah, there was nobody who looked like me, and there was nobody who was my gender, right? Though, and no one, like, they just knew nothing about my life. And it was this very, powerful moment of, like, I am actually sharing this real thing, and this is a movement, and will make real change, right? And I remember I was telling my co-founder, my right hand, this, but then it was also that, like, real painful grief in my heart. It was like this grief of looking at, like, at the life I've lived, looking at the person I was, and understanding that these things no longer stood, and walking into this reality so fast. And that has brought so much healing, right? But healing can also be very painful when you've justified certain actions your whole life because of things that you believed were true in your past life, and they're no longer true. They're no longer feasible. It's no longer feasible to say that I am limited by the things that happened to me or the systems I belong to. Because now the exact same systems, or the exact same people I wish to learn from, right? They don't know the systems, right? I'm going there to learn their systems so that I can implement them in my life or in my system. I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you're chosen for one of these special paths, right? And I feel like I've gone through so much isolation and loneliness that I can confidently say that, like, when it is time to experience a new life and you're given that opportunity, right? Don't limit yourself or restrain yourself thinking that what you believe to be true at the moment that you're going through something that seems so radical. Don't believe that those things will exist forever. Because if I continue to believe that I couldn't have the things that I have today because of the things that I went through, maybe 3 years ago, yesterday, right? I never fully leverage the opportunity that I have now, and I'd still be identifying with who I was before and the circumstances I was going through before, and the identities I was maintaining because of the things that I was going through. I would still maintain those, and I wouldn't fully leverage the opportunity that I've been given and be willing to take risks because I was too scared, or I was too dependent on who I used to be. I think, yeah, and I said this in one of the other videos, I've transitioned so quickly into a completely different person, and the reason is because the moment that you're willing to and accept the rooms that God is putting you in, right? These completely different new rooms, right? Where, maybe if you never had money, right? Now you're taking $1 million calls, or you never had opportunity. Now you have all these opportunities rushing to you, and there's always a day, right? There will always be a day when those things come, because those who go through the most pain now, right? When you're going through, like, with the most pain. Like I can look through maybe like the last 6 years, and I've gone through so much pain, right? So much deep internal pain that, and I was telling this to my friend the other day who was going through something, and I was like, pain fades, no matter how painful that pain is. If you're just willing to let yourself, pain fades, and even the worst pain in the world will go away, right? But if it wasn't for that pain, I wouldn't be in these rooms. If it was not for that pain, I wouldn't be emotionally intelligent. And you know, yes, the world can label it as certain things like hypervigilance or trauma or what. Like there's so many things that the world can label these things as. But at the same time, right, if you take the worst things that have ever happened to you, if you take crisis and you take the opportunity from the crisis, whether it is to write a book or to learn more about yourself or to go to therapy or to heal or to move country or to just try something new, you'll be so grateful to yourself for walking forward in that. I'm so grateful that I'm here, and I'm so grateful for my pain, no matter how much more pain is being revealed to me as I live this new experience. Because I think there's one thing to be, you know, to feel pain, but it's one thing to walk into a completely different society that doesn't even understand your pain. So your pain doesn't actually exist like that, right? It has nothing that is feeding it to exist. Because usually when we're in our original environments, there are people and there are foods and there are smells that are reminding us of the things or reinstating what we are because of what we went through, because those are the places where we went through those things in, right? Well, when you're willing to, you know, when you walk away from that, right, and you get to start this life again, and you know, God blesses you with this incredible new life, right? You realize at that moment that you can be anyone you want to be, and you can do anything you ever want in this world if you're just willing. And I don't even think it's just willing. You just walk. You just, you know, sometimes it's not even about willing. There are certain days when I'm not willing. There are certain days that I cry myself to sleep, because it's that transitionary period or that transitionary phase of not know, like that identity that once was doesn't exist. And this identity that is existing is the one that you've always wanted, but there's so many deficits in who you are because of certain things from so and so and so, and you know, etc. But I guess I challenge many people to say, could your challenges be blessings? Could the life that you're saying is the most terrible thing have a positive frame to it? You know, could you be an activist? Could you start a business? Could you be this entrepreneur? Could this story be something so vivid for others that you inspire so many people beside you, like, you know, beyond yourself in 10 years, right? Or even now, right? By sharing your story, like, are the challenges that you go through today, do they have to be a limitation? Do they have to be the thing that you keep telling yourself and reinstating to yourself that these things are true? Right? Why can't you? The other day I saw the South African, obviously South Africa has a big unemployment problem, and you know, he went viral on the internet, right? He goes with a sign, and the sign says like, you know, please give me a job. This is the credentials that I have. And this is what I'm going to end this by saying. You know, he has a signboard, and it's, you know, these are the credentials that I have, and you know, he's there like on the side of, like, I think it was like, I don't think it was Sandton, I don't know where it was, right? It was either in Johannesburg or KwaZulu, and he's standing there, and he's like, you know, his name, his contacts, and everything are on this piece of paper, and I was like, that's what life is about. That's actually how life should be lived, right? Because a lot of us are living we're living in brain beliefs, brain thoughts, brain processes that don't exist. And that's what this whole process has shown me. What I have believed to be reality is not reality. You can do anything you want in this world. The only thing that is standing in between you and what you want is you. It is you. Because when I walked into that room and I was the only person who looked like me and sounded like me and had experiences like me, and those people treated me with respect, then and maybe that whole time, maybe I was the one questioning whether they would, would they respect me, right? And I was looking at it retrospectively, right? A different version of myself would have been so self-aware and worried about how certain people would perceive me. But then when I walked into that room, it was like I knew these people my whole life, like it was normal. I didn't have these false perceptions anymore. And now I was walking into this reality, and I was like, damn, right? The problem was not like, it was never circumstances or places or people. No, the problem was me, right? The problem was me, and no matter, and I think that's the point of life, right? To go through these many phases in your life where you decipher who you've been, or you decipher the patterns of your life versus reality, right? Because I think to live a true and full life is to live it with a true perception of reality, not like a tainted perception of reality based off of what has happened to you. No, like a true one where you unlearn all the behaviorism, you unlearn all the things that were implemented in your mind, not because of who you are, but because of what you went through, or all of these different things that define who we are. It's a shedding of that. And then I think, like, for me, I think spirituality has been that, or getting to know God has been that, right? Shedding versions of myself that didn't exist necessarily, because those are actually characteristics of myself, but those are just things that I went through. But moral of the story, I always love these transitionary period ones, because I can always look back at them. Like, sometimes I look at these, I think I don't post for views. I actually post because it's interesting to see myself grow up, right? Like, it's interesting to see myself when I was, like I think it was like 2024 when I started YouTube, and I was so different. And even just the way that I speak and I articulate myself changed so much because of, being on YouTube. So it's always interesting to see myself go through these different transitions, and it's fun. Like, okay, it's not fun like in the first year, right? Because you don't tend to look back, but like 2-3 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. But ending on that's me moment. Yeah, guys, life's crazy. Not even life is crazy, but life has so many opportunities if you're just willing to let go, right? Of who you've been, and then accept who you could become, because who you've been is permanent. Who you've been is something you can't change, but what you can change it, and that is fixed, right? But what is not fixed, and what is variable based off of the decisions you choose to make, and what tomorrow looks like is at least maybe even not immediate tomorrow, but like tomorrow as a long phase, right? Or the next phase of your life solely and wholeheartedly depends on the choices you make today and the person that you choose to be, right? There's a difference between picking up your phone or picking up a book, or the difference between, maybe reading scripture versus not reading scripture, or reading, taking in some positive, saying affirmations or not saying affirmations, or I don't know, I'm just listing all of the things I can possibly think of that maybe contribute to you. Exercising versus not exercising, eating, greens versus eating cake, right? After all of those repeated atomic habits, right? What forms of your life is solely an equation of what choices you've made in the past. And I'm going to leave you with that. But anyways, bye.